Hello and welcome to our monthly Zoom. We will discuss iconography from point of view of art, or whether iconographers should be artists or not. And first, I'll speak about difference between iconographer craftsman and iconographer artist, and then we discuss why. I'll begin this way. How can we usually distinguish artist's work from craftsman's work? It probably can be a good question for everybody, as that's what we start our brainstorming from. So work of an artist from work of a craftsman. Do you have any specific, thoughts about that? Would you maybe raise your hand or just, yes, Emma, please, thank you. But you're muted.
Oh, yes. I've come from a tradition of a craftsman in terms of jewellery, but there's also a contemporary aspect to it where there's a blend between craftsmanship and also artistry. I find that there is a distinction that I've been pondering.
Okay, but how you define it? How does that, in words?
The difference for me between the two is probably a responsibility. For craftsmanship is a skill based on tradition, perhaps artistry. So a craftsperson has a responsibility to their skills and their tradition. An artist has a responsibility to the people that they are trying to communicate with.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
Also with the background of a craft, perhaps.
Mm-hmm. Good. All right. But when you look at something, you don't know who made it. Why did this person produce this thing? How would you define? Is there any criteria you can follow? You can just suggest.
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
Alison?
I know.
Yes?
I was going to say I'm in the same boat as Emma. I'm a floor loom weaver, and some people see weaving as a domestic craft that only women do, and others see weaving as very, if you're weaving for a different audience like royalty or silk, the French silk weavers, they're not doing craft, they're creating masterpieces in a certain way. So sometimes it's the audience that buys the work. Are they wanting a domestic craft to lay on the table, or are they wanting a high-end silk Italian hand spun or jacquard spun fabric for a ball gown? Yeah, I'm in the same with Emma. It can be either or. It's a tricky one. Yeah, it's a difficult one. I often think about that.
Yeah. I had a season of doing lead lighting, and that was certainly for me a craft, and I didn't get into the artistic part of it because I was really copying. I was working from other people's models. There were sort of set designs, and I suppose the artistry was in choosing glass and things like that. But it was basically the craft of cutting the glass and putting on band-aids and soldering.
Okay, but again, when you look at something, you say it's artistry because of what? Of level of craftsmanship? No, that's probably not enough, the level of craftsmanship, because not all the artists were great craftsmen and etc. So, okay, because again, when I was posing this question to myself, I had no answer yesterday morning. But I found it, and I'm happy to share it with you. So let's move forward, and let's say that pure visual art is technically a communication where the meaning is transmitted to our brain directly via visual channel with no words. Can we say that? I think it may be. Because in this case, it's a specific way of communication. We're not talking about the craftsman's skill. We are not talking about the content of the image. We are talking about what kind of communication is it. And if we talk about art, visual art, we accept it as a message and we feel we don't need to verbalize it. We can say, here's a fish on a plate with some background patterns, and it's probably like deciphering music. Someone will tell you, I hear sounds of violin together with sounds of saxophone. Will you feel anything? I doubt. Nothing, because it's not working verbally. And I see here, it's image of Christ, and we can also describe him in words. He has a robe, he has halo, but the image produces an impact on a different side of our brain. It's a different level or different type of perception. Well, okay, Philip, it's clear that visual is perceived visually, but why are you making all this fuss? What, Philip, you are saying is that there are iconographers who are artists and those who are not artists. And you're trying to convince people, well, you, my audience, that it's not good for iconographers not to be artists. But how can you distinguish? Well, I'm not going to bring towards the usual point or stuff about copying or not copying. This, I think, is still a side effect. I will suggest you to evaluate the main means artist is using to communicate with us on this particular image. So what would be your thoughts if you were suggested to analyze what were the main means the artist used to communicate with you? Like, what do you see? What means you see? Yes, some, I don't know. If you speak about pharmacology, we can say, in this particular drug, we have this component and this component working for that and that purpose. So in this particular image, what are the ingredients and what are their targets? Can maybe you say something? Listen, yes.
I'm just thinking of the detail of the blending, the glazing and the blending. I'm looking at how particular that is and how quite, I don't want to say the word good or clever or that, but the glazing and the blending is very appealing, I guess. It just looks right, sort of thing.
Okay.
It works in a sense.
All right. Okay, I'm happy to hear that, but I have something to discuss with you a little later. Okay. Anything else? Anybody else? Peter? Emma?
It could be accused of following a set of rules.
But rules are not bad.
That's right, but it's that's what a craftsperson does.
Okay.
The craftsman follows the instruction of the master.
Okay.
And
okay,
I guess
yes. Let's move forward. Yes, yes.
Yeah. So
No,
there's
he follows the instructions.
So there's a way in which this iconographer does hair and beards, and it looks likely that that's the way it will be done each time an icon is painted.
You mean that's
Okay.
stylized?
Well, not it is stylized, but it is stylized in a particular way.
Okay.
I guess my silence is sort of catching up with. So, what is the difference between being artistic and being a competent at the craft of painting an icon?
Mm-hmm. Okay, Emma, your word against the word of this artist.
Philip always asks curly questions.
Yeah, the curly.
Yes.
I find it hard to analyze work, and I almost want to ask the artist what they were trying to say. Sometimes I do find it hard to work out if they're trying to communicate something or not. To me, I feel like I have to discuss it with the artist sometimes. But I see harmony here and I see contrast, both together, but it's harmonious. What it would be trying to communicate as an artist, I'm not quite sure. But not because it can't tell me anything, it's because I'm not understanding perhaps the specific language.
Okay. Alison, you were willing to say some more words, no? No. Okay. So I think I have a good question now, and here it is. Can we say that this artist is trying to communicate with us directly with visual means? Can we say this artist wants us to feel his red, his gray, his colors directly in our brain as a message, or is he just or she repeating simply what he or she is supposed to do?
As you pose that question, yes, then I can see that the artist has been, it feels intentional. Yes. So yes, now that you pointed out the colors that I talked about being harmonious, yeah, in those red and sort of like gray and earthy tones, that seems intentional.
Okay, but from my side, I was thinking in a direction which would be probably slightly different from what you're accepting it, because what I'm saying, we not analyze the means from point of view how they were applied, but we analyze the intention of the artist, what to make the main vehicle of the content he is trying to deliver. And for me, when I see so much craftsman's work, when I see these brushstrokes, infinite quantities, so accurate and nicely performed, I feel that his main message is delivered via craftsman's perfectness or skill, which he is trying to demonstrate. So he is telling us a very long story with lots of very accurate words. In the meantime, these words arrive to the point where we accept words. So we accept brushstrokes, we see the trees, but we don't see the forest he is trying to communicate to us. So that, I guess, is the way of a craftsman, because artistic means are supposed to function directly without us thinking how he applied this or that. Yes, we're not supposed to wonder whether he spent 5 hours or he applied 7 highlights or 1 to deliver a certain thought. Because generally speaking, we are not supposed to think about the mechanism too much. Here we see the mechanism more than the result of the work of this mechanism. Because if it's an artist wants to impress us with the ability. No, because these pseudo-Byzantine brushstrokes are showing the craftsman's work, but not the art. Problem is, it's not imitation, because if he wanted to imitate the message the old master wanted to deliver, he would imitate it with his colors, he would alter it, he would try to imitate the final result, how to arrive to our brain with the same message. But he's saying, okay, you know what, guys? To tell you something, I have to say this, this, and this, and this. And I hope you understand me. But these are the words. And to compare these things, we always need to analyze what's the main goal of the artist. Like, why would he or she apply this color or that color? I think I made this slide a while ago, but now it works well. So what's the main content of the message we receive? In the image on the left, we see a prayerful face, where to make the face look less terrestrial and less fleshy, artist made the green sankir, the green color underneath, for us not to see him as a flourishing young man. So he or she wanted it to look more green for us not to confuse his face with someone we know. But in the other case, we see rather blush and flesh, because that is what the artist applied and what artist wanted us to see, because this artist wanted us to see how good he or she is in representing the angel. So the question is how this artist selected the means for the image, because it's not a question of material. You may be constrained to use gold, as on the left case, and okay, well, I'll give you another example of gold, like here. I guess when they made it in 17th century, it was mostly gold. Yes, you see a few little faces, but these are the areas where you see all gilded things. And even though they're all gilded, tons and tons of gilding, we mostly see a specific impression the artist is creating. Yes, we see what Christ is trying to do, how he is blessing the apostles, what expressions they have, how they intercommunicate. And we don't care how much gold is there, because the gold is just a medium, is one of the means you can use for anything. You can wear a golden ring, you can use it for painting, no matter. Matters just what he is communicating. And in other case, when you use gold as a tool for, again, artistic supposedly tool, what we see this gold is working for, I would say it's not communicating anything visually except for I'm gold. That's a ton of gold, which I'm supposed to show you. And it's a totally rational message delivered by rational impressions. We see not an image, but a certain depiction of gold. It's an icon of richness, of eternal, I don't know, metal, which remains always intact, but yet mostly we see gold as just gold. It's not transformed something. It's a summary of objects which are supposed to make an impression on you. The marble, the gold, different things together, they deliver you some verbal information. Like, here is some marble, here is some gold, here is some decoration. All together, they are supposed to be a good summary, but they don't click into a new world. They don't become a message which is delivered by visual means of art. So this is what mainly I think is the difference between the work of art and a work of artisan. We do not question ability of this iconographer to make highlights and shadows. We just see what he's trying to tell us with these highlights and shadows. Well, we only see fragments of his message because the image was heavily damaged, and yet we see a message which is having some expressive means and something specific to tell us. And in this case, the artist is performing very accurately, very perfectly, I would say, lots of different actions he or she is supposed to perform for us to supposedly see the figure. But I see the brush strokes, I see the shadows and highlights, but I don't see the image he may try to communicate with me. I see nice little details everywhere. And this is not an icon, but yet Each of these figures presents some artistic version of a human figure. Yes, each of them is an image. Each of them is a little poetry being part of a huge poetry. And you don't care about highlights and shadows. You care about receiving this message into your brain directly and say, wow, what a good or bad. Yes, there can be things you may not agree, but you look at them at how they are delivered visually. They're not delivered as details. And this is one of my, I don't know, sketches many years ago, but I'm trying to say, in this case, I was trying to deliver the message, which was supposed to be icon of transfiguration, with visual means, to oppose the white with the red, with the yellow, how things work together, how these visual means function. And in this case, I see the artist has repeated what was suggested by the model. But okay, in the model, we mainly see Christ because he's huge. On the version, contemporary version, we see figures are all equal. Okay, but mainly on these equal figures, we also see the gold because the artist somehow thinking that gilding is so important, it has to be applied. On the old one, we only see very tiny, teeny, thin lines of gold because they help for us to accept this message as a visual message. And on the one on the top, it's one of the words the artist is supposed to say. Well, to tell you about deities, yes, Christ, Mary, and John, I have to tell you this, and these things, so you understand me. Did you understand me? I think we did, because we understood all your words you were telling us, but you didn't deliver the message. That's the problem. So the one below delivers the message. You may like or not CNA as a school, but you do accept something directly here. That's it. And well, technique is great, but is there anything you can deliver beyond technique? That's the question. More than technique is able to. Because on the left, the image is, I would say, cozy and harmonious, and altogether, it's a picture, we can say. It's an icon, but it's also a well-balanced picture communicating something as an integrated piece. And the one on the right consists of lots and lots of little details, which are performed nicely, but it doesn't work as a picture. It's simply a set of details. Okay, so what you communicate visually means you communicate visually. If you try to convince someone with lots and lots of words or actions or skills, it's not the visual communication. And that means you're not trying to be an artist. How about that?
It's quite liberating as an artist to think you don't have to go by the rules or tell a story if you can capture the essence of the message. That makes sense.
Well, of course, as artists working for church, you do have limitations, yeah? You're not supposed to bring message in this way, and you should not utilize certain words or means, which probably may scandalize someone, of course. But again, what's the purpose of your work? Purpose to deliver message visually. That's why you're invited here. We invite an actor to act, reader to read, and artist to create something visual, which you see and you love how you feel in your brain seeing this thing. How you feel under impression of this particular image.
What do you do, Philip, maybe from your experience, when the audience doesn't see the message, like there's a clash of the artist and the audience, whether they're in the church or whatever?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Can you rephrase it, please?
Say you get a job to do, a commission, like the one you did with the cornflowers, the blue flowers. You did very differently with you painted yellow and you had blue flowers and things. It was one of the big things you showed us in the iconostasis. You painted the iconostasis, but you had flowers in that.
Okay, the glass one. Yes, the glass thing.
Yes,
No.
yes, you did a very different one. That's a beautiful artistic piece, but what if the audience sitting in the church don't get that artistic message?
Well, here is the thing. First, it's supposed that you have a good communication with the client who would agree or not for you to provide this particular kind of message. It's a difficult thing because sometimes you don't know what you're producing because you're in process. And the second thing, what you are saying, people do not accept what you suggest. People do not accept what you produce. Well, I guess it depends on the way of perception, first of all. Because in many cases, people want things depicted to be deciphered. Like, I paint this because it means this and this. Like, I want these flowers because they would be symbolizing that and that. And in this case, it's a matter of interpretation. So for me, it's more important the visual message, which is not interpretable exceptionally the verbal means. So I don't care what kind of flowers come out, they just work perfectly there. And it's just different type of brain, different type of understanding. What should it be like the final result? Are you jongling with specific understandings of certain topics? It's one thing. Or you're providing them with visual impression, it's another thing. So you don't like the visual impression I'm providing you with. Okay, we probably should have this decision before when I was showing you this sketch. And from the other hand, again, there happens that people not always understand your intentions, because sometimes, like, you have in mind your own ideas, people are thinking about something they know, as it very often happens. And in this case, I would say, suggest people to try to live with this thing for a while. Maybe they get used to it. Because as for you, it was a process of discovery of something. Yeah, you didn't know how this image will look like at the end before you made it. So maybe these people will walk through the same way you did. You probably may explain, like, okay, I started from this, and this seemed to me like not good enough. I decided to add the blue to make it round, to make it bigger, and that's where I arrived. So that probably could be a good case. But again, there is always the figure of the client who is inviting you, and it depends on the trust between you and the client. So if the client is feeling there might be some difficulty between you and audience, there should be him or her to say, look, guys, you know what? I'm introducing you to this new work our artist has produced, and here is the artist telling about the work. And if, again, the audience is trusting him and he is trusting you, there can be the chain of trust. Where can be this? And again, as what you're trying to produce supposed to be based on visual impulses, supposed to be functioning visually, it's something which has to be in the context of visual world, of visual culture of our time, of our visual culture. So it's hard to produce something revolutionary unless you want to scandalize everybody. So you always merge different existing things together. And look, guys, I have borrowed this from here, this one from there. And you see how I'm putting them together, because I think for your particular church space, you need it a little darker or lighter or more elongated. So it's always the process of creation, but under circumstances. Yeah, you have your limitations, which give you necessity to invent something, to provide people with a new piece. The old pieces are good because they serve their old goals. But in our concrete, I don't know, circumstances, conditions. We need some newer solution for this purpose. Here, the artist who invents, who generates something new, which will fit perfectly in their space, and yet be fully rooted in tradition, and yet be functioning as a new phrase, a new communication. Sorry for so many words.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. I like the idea of the minister, whatever, takes you on a journey of trust. You know,
and from your side again, it's also your journey, and you're sharing your journey. Like, okay, I'm solving your problem. Yes, for your church, I'm painting an icon. So it's a problem you pose for me, and I'm thinking how to solve this problem. And these are the conditions I have to keep in mind. Maybe you can help me sometimes, you, my client, maybe you cannot. But here are these reasons I was trying to consider making these decisions. And for many people, the verbal, because most people are verbal. From school, we learn to verbalize everything, and we stop using our irrational, our imaginational part of the brain. So most people will be satisfied with what you describe with words.
I can remember you once saying, Philip, in one of our classes, that you can go to somebody else, go next door to ask your neighbour, what do you see? How could this be improved? Which reminds me that we often need somebody else to tell us what we're saying.
Yes, because maybe sometimes we have the words we keep repeating, which make everybody feel bad. So stop saying this word, Philip. It's not a good one. Or you're repeating it hundreds of times. Don't. Thank you, Peter. Sorry.
The same words and the same paint can say different things. I very often translate what we talk about in art into music, and years ago, I was in a choir singing. I've forgotten what it was. It was a psalm, and the choir was singing, but also there were soloists singing as well. And we'd rehearsed it very thoroughly, and then we took it to a church, and I was asked to preach on that psalm. So I had heard the soloist sing her solo in rehearsal and at another performance. After the sermon, she delivered her solo completely differently. Same words, same music, but it was different. And I said to her after, how come? She said, because of what you said. So it kind of makes performing art and this visual art, it is static because it stops at a point, but it doesn't stop being part of a community that is in dialogue. So that because I've been so involved in both art as painting and performing art, performing art is obvious. There is an event. The song starts and it finishes.
Time limit.
The event is done with, and we talk about it afterwards. But there's a sense in which each time somebody, a worshipper, an admirer, someone visiting a gallery, stands, kneels, sits in front of a piece of art, that is an event. That is an artistic event in which artist and worshipper or observer is in dialogue.
It is. Any real piece of art is a dialogue, because you're not suggesting this is the ideal version of what you asked for. No, this is my version based on my experience, your circumstances. How do you think about it? And of course, we do need somebody to tell, because very often we don't notice. And this is just technical problem, because we are humans. We used to be happy with certain details. We forget about them, and we don't see them fresh eyes when at the end they look totally distracting. So yeah, totally right. But very often it happens that the questions from the side of the client may be the questions of someone who is reasoning with verbal, with rational side of the world. Like, why this flower has 5 petals, not 7 or 4? Like, so these are things which people pose in front because that's how they read. And this is very often a problem. So the readers read the signs, read the symbols, read the details, but not the essence you're trying to deliver. Because they don't see, because we very often stop using our visual ability to receive image directly, even though contemporary culture, commercial world, all the world of our time is much more visual than it used to be before in the middle of the century, because now the screens which surround us, the designers, the people who invent different kinds of visual content do try to deliver it directly to you. So we have much more of this in our time, and yet our audience not always is reading. So people are very often trying to decipher. So what did you mean by this particular kind of line? Oh, does it symbolize the, I don't know, straightness of our life or curvedness of our life? So this is a problem indeed.
And sometimes it just means what it means. I mean, there's a story of Franz Liszt.
It is.
And Franz Liszt had written a new piece of music for the piano, and he played it to his friends. And when he'd finished, one of his friends said, "But what does it mean?" And he said, "It means this." And he played it again.
Because this is it. He wanted it to be delivered directly in the way it is. It's a pie, you eat it. You don't decipher it. So it's an image or it's music. You feel it, you live with it, you experience it. That could be a good word, probably, yes. So I made for you this piece of experience.
And that when we put words to some of our art, it can detract rather than add to it. It's a bit like explaining a joke. It's not nearly as funny when it's been explained.
It is. That's why the lettering on icons should be, but it should not be huge. It should be just as modest as necessary, just things to be seen and I don't know, identified, but not more than that. So
words are okay, but words are okay, but they'll never replace kisses and punches.
Wow. We can say so as well. Yes. No, that's right. So it's interesting for me, again, like, how do you want to deliver the message? You want to deliver it with details which are supposed to create the whole. That's one thing. That's the craftsman's way. But if you're trying to make the details become one, which is the visual message, then you have to choose the means which will be appropriate. And you may have sometimes to, I don't know, deny certain details because that will be overloading. That will be too much for this poetry to be the way you have conceived it.
So I guess as an artist versus a craftsman, the artist has an idea. Well, I guess the craftsman has an idea too, but the artist has an idea they want to communicate, but the skills or the tools or what they have to use are in service of the artwork itself rather than the primary reason for it to be. So I guess the artist has to find that balance between being intuitive but also asking themselves, why am I how or why are the tools or skills that I'm using, how do they best express my idea?
Yes, exactly. And those which don't serve, put them away.
Yep.
Because they bother. They show how skillful you are, but they don't deliver the message.
Yeah.
So what's more important for you? And you have to be able to say, no, you know what? I'm so proud of my gilding. I want to show more gilding. Okay, guys, then probably it's not the art. Or I don't know, I'm so proud of my red color in this particular piece. I want it to stay. Well, this red is not working, but I wanted to stay. You have to rework everything around this red then. Well, I will. Okay, and then you dance around this red, and you at the end may make it work well to function well, but not to pull all the blanket towards itself. So that's it. So it was interesting for me, and I'm happy that it worked. I hope you may probably be, I don't know, writing some of your objections later if they come to your mind. That would be interesting. But I do not see. No, listen. You know what? No, your camera has the setting which is showing in focus your face, but all the rest is blurred, and so somehow it's not functioning. I'm
just showing that I'm writing, but I'm writing all your good points.
Okay. No, just defocusing. It intentionally defocuses everything except for the face, so we can't see it. No, writing is good when it is writing. Like, again, poetry can only be produced with words, but with the words, the artist is producing a beautiful image. Yes, remember, you will remember your favorite poetries, and the words are exquisite or terrible, but together they're just wow. So this effect of wow is not delivered by exact following of rules. Rules are helping us to know that what we deliver is accepted as it is. Like, that's why we teach this, I don't know, iconography drawing, because when you look at something, your brain should not be bothering you. You know what? This artist doesn't know how to draw. How can he deliver something serious? Otherwise, it will be, well, he knows how to draw, but he decided to shift the perspective for you not to worry about drawing, to think about some, I know, image he or she is suggesting for you to digest. So drawing is needed as grammar for language, but we play with grammar all the time to make our speech more expressive. So here it is.
Yes.
That's the poetry issue is an interesting one, because you've made the distinction between the craft and art. And Walter Brueggemann, an American theologian, in his book called Finally Comes the Poet, talks about the difference between prose and poetry. And he says that our theology and our church has been stifled by a prose we live in a prose flattened world. And that he cites Walt Whitman's poem, in which he talks about, all the adventurers have come, the explorers, the engineers, the scientists, lists them all off, and then it says, and finally comes the poet, arguing that that is the one that actually talks meaning into life.
Because every
Wonderful.
word counts. Every word gives a meaning. Emma, yes, sorry?
Oh, no, just wonderful. Yeah, thank you for sharing.
He talks about scientific language as coming in like that, and so that every word means exactly that and can never mean anything else outside it. But poetic language works that way. And the mind sparks off in all sorts of different directions. Is that what our icons ought to do?
Yes. Well, I would say every great work of art
Oh, yeah.
Because it's always combination of a global with very private, global with individual. And individual recognize something but it opens up the whole world of meanings and opportunities. Yes, totally with you.
Yeah.
Totally with you. Thank you, Peter.
But I better go back and read Brueggemann.
Okay. I'll also go back and read something else. And I probably will add some more pictures to this lecture, because that's what I was going to do in my extra hour. I was hoping I was having, but I
we'll look forward to the
think
video of your session at 2 o'clock.